like I'm floating.
In just about every area, the OnePlus 6 outshines its price tag. But when it comes to the camera, there's still a noticeable gap between this and heavier phones like iPhone X, Google Pixel, and Samsung Galaxies. The camera on the OnePlus 6 can't be described as bad, but none of the photos I have taken with it have made me say wow. Because before I get into the results, let's take a look at the specs. On the back, there is a two camera setup, a main 16 megapixel f1.7 and a secondary 20 megapixel sensor, helping with the portrait mode. A big update this time around is the introduction of OIS, which has been missing since the OnePlus 3T. OnePlus has been altering all the second camera functions since it introduced the feature with the OnePlus 5. Originally, it acted as the fairly poor telephoto lens, with 5T switching that to a dedicated low-light camera. Neither way overly successful, and again, it doesn't work so well here. Portrait shots I took were relatively weak, with poor detailing around the hair and a blur that was far too forced. The main sensor fares a lot better, though, reliably snapping well exposed and detailed shots in varying outdoor conditions. I would like the auto HDR mode to be slightly more aggressive to offset the average dynamic range I ran into. As by default, pictures lack the contrast and pop they get from pricier phones. There is a nice pro mode built into the camera app. I found myself using it slightly more than usually here, as the results are noticeably better. Unlike a lot of flagship phones in 2018, there is no AI stuff going on inside this camera, so it doesn't automatically switch modes depending on what you are shooting. There is no big deal, as the whole area is still a bit hit and miss at this minute. And the results are never that obvious. Still, even without dedicated things like landscape mode, I still captured some nice city shots with plenty of depth and detail. Low light performance has always been an issue for OnePlus phones, and while the OIS is bigger and OIS and the bigger pixels inside the sensor, OnePlus claims that these are 19% bigger than the 5T. Does make it noticeably better than before. It still lacks the flagship touch. Skies in the photo before taken is getting dark. I have an odd false color and light sources. Overblow easily. Not every shot is dirt. If light is even and not all forced in one spot, then wide f1.7 aperture does help with some nice photos. On the front, we have got a 16 megapixel camera with that will, thanks to a recent software update, offer a portrait mode. It's easy to take a good selfie at any condition. It's okay. Selfie camera that's pretty much the same as the last two OnePlus devices. It does struggle with a lot of height through in the portrait mode, which is to be expected in the single sensor. Video can be recorded at 4K 60 FPS and uses form of electronic image stabilization to keep it steady. Footage is good, but it does struggle to accurately represent colors and scenarios.